Hi, it's Sydney, and for my human rights report card, I chose to do Syria. Here is Syria on a map. It's located in the Middle East, and it borders Turkey, Iraq, Lebanon, and Israel, and the Mediterranean Sea. And I gave Syria an F as its grade because their state and their country is in a serious human rights crisis, and the government there is failing to protect the people from these disasters. Some of the major human rights issues are the refugee crisis, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard about, and additionally, the chemical weapons attacks and human shielding. So the refugee crisis is raging in Syria. Since 2011, which was the start of the Syrian civil war, about 12 million Syrians have been displaced from their homes, and a lot of them are forced into refugee camps, which have limited or no access to food, clean water, and health care. Additionally, the Syrian government has restricted access to humanitarian aid and made it a lot harder for other nations to step in and help the Syrian people. The chemical weapons attacks are also an issue as the government has been dropping chemical bombs such as chlorine bombs, mustard gas, and sarin, which is a nerve agent which blocks nerve endings and attacks the nervous system. And the government has launched these attacks against their people, which is therefore why the government is failing to protect their people, because they have been killing the Syrians. And there have been at least 106 attacks since 2013, which is an extreme amount. One solution to this, like a possible solution, is to better regulate chemical activity or air activity, which may seem like a lot, but I think just if the government, and the UN or another government is ensuring that planes are serving the purpose of protecting and looking out for dangers instead of serving the purpose of being the danger, then that would help prevent chemical weapons attacks. The last issue is human shielding, which is mainly an issue within ISIS, where ISIS takes members of ISIS have been known to take innocent people off the streets and use them for their personal benefit, which some examples of this are they've taken civilians off the streets and tied them up as a physical barricade, like as a wall during shootouts or attacks. They've also kidnapped children and taken them hostage and used them as a cover for illegal activities. So an example of this is they one time filled a car with young boys and fled while they were fleeing a city because they had illegal weapons or drugs in the back seat. And by filling a car with by putting young boys in the car, they avoided airstrikes and they were able to safely take their goods across the border. But they kidnapped young boys. So this was a major human rights issue. Next, there's a lot of Syrian human rights issues in the current news, but one that I'm going to highlight is this one. It's called Misery Every Day, Every Hour in Syrian Camp, and Now It's Grown Critical. And this article highlights specifically the issues in one of the refugee camps, which is one of hundreds. And this refugee camp holds 50,000 displaced people. And it's running low on food, clean water, and medical care, which is a major issue. And the article also highlights that this has been designated as having a critical level of humanitarian aid. And many of these people that are in the camps are stuck there because there's no long-term relief plan for the refugees. And additionally, they're blocked from entering the border countries such as Jordan. So people end up living in these refugee camps for years with no way to escape, with no money to move anywhere else, which is really sad. Then some of the images that I highlighted was this shows Syrian refugee crisis. This one shows the post airstrike in Syria, and it shows a member of the Syrian civil defense carrying a young boy who's been injured after an airstrike, and you can see gas in the air and people running, and it's a disaster site. This image shows homeless orphans at a refugee camp, and a lot of young children become orphans when they are forced to flee from their homes because either their parents are killed on the journeys or die of old age or they're separated from them. And you can see these kids, even as young as babies, are living in terrible conditions with trash behind them, and they're not living under fully constructed buildings. This image shows people in a refugee camp, and you can see that these people are still with their families, but they're carrying all their belongings, and in the background are tents set up, so everyone's living basically out in the wilderness, and they don't have real structures or anything to protect them. So, in order to protect the people of Syria, there are some non-governmental organizations that work to raise money for the refugee crisis to relieve the crisis. And these are like Islamic Relief USA, Save the Children, which applies to like the orphan children in Syria, and the Syrian NGO Alliance, and additionally Concern Worldwide. And for example, these sites um, they serve the purpose of helping Syria, and it details like why Syrians need help and what's going on in Syria.